Okay, what do I think should be included in a distant learning plan? Well, first of all, we have to start with what the child's IEP look like prior to the shutdown. All right, so we would look at, let's say, the goals. What specific areas were we targeting in the educational performance areas of academics, communication, or social emotional development? And it could be all three, depending on the child and their level of need. So you start there and you go, okay, we were targeting reading, for example, and he had a goal in reading. And at that point, you can either use that same goal and continue to work on that, or you can sit there and in a good faith effort, working with the parent, identify um, a different type of goal in order to get you through this period from the shutdown through, let's say, August. I know a lot of schools are bumping up their end dates to where a lot of them are just ending next week. Now, if that's the case, a lot of schools are saying, well, school's ended. Um, well, that doesn't necessarily stop anything. So because it doesn't necessarily stop anything, then that leads you to your second question. Well, let's finish the distant learning plan. So you got some goals that you're working on. All right, that's got to be sort of the foundation. That this is what we're working on. There's got to be a purpose for what you're working on, for it to fit sort of that good faith effort. Because what are the services attached to? What are we working toward? That's where the goal is important. Should the goal be what it was, as rigorous as it was during a traditional school year? Not necessarily. That's where I'm saying that some good faith effort in talking to the parent and individualizing that, you know, makes sense. You can use that one, but the teacher and the parent needs to be cognizant of the feasible way to um, work on that. So that's where, I'm not necessarily saying that you take that goal from the IEP and continue to work on it in distant learning plan. You may need to change it for the status that we're in currently. So it's more of a maintenance and an attempt to maintain skills and make progress. Those are the goals. Stave off regression, stave off the loss of skills. So that would be the good faith standard there. So you would need to sit there and establish, what does the service amounts look like? How can we provide those? How much involvement is going to be required of the parent, and are they capable of and capable meaning, are they working? Do they have responsibilities? Are they competent to be able to support their child in some of these areas? Because look, guys, I have a Juris Doctorate, but I can tell you right now that there's a limitation to what I know pertaining to how to help my daughter. All right, she has autism. She's had an IEP since she was 3. Okay, I know my wife and I understand our limitations with regards to her needs, and that's where the good faith effort also needs to include that discussion with the parent as to how competent or comfortable they feel in some of this instruction. You also, and all these things need to be notated. All these things need to be documented somewhere so that there's not confusion later, or finger pointing is really what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to maintain a good relationship in a very high stress situation. Um, but I can tell you that the emotions over the last couple of months are absolutely getting in the way, and these feelings that people are allowing to cloud their reason is really going to get their employer as a school system into some trouble, and also some parents that are going to be impediments to their child's needs. Okay, because both, depending on how you want to approach this different time that we're experiencing in our history, it's going to damage one or the other. That's why everybody sort of needs to check their feelings and start using their reason and their understanding about how we need to traverse this in order to get from point A to point C. Okay. Um, so that should be the distant learning plan. And that third question actually, so can a parent be made responsible for collecting data, growth and goals? Well, yeah, because they're one that are going to be at home with the child. But if I was a special education teacher, I would do some simple probes as much as you're capable via Zoom, or some other kind of video format if the family has that kind of technological availability. If not, then you're going to have to find a different way. You need to establish a baseline on whatever you're working on. And this is just smart practice in order to verify the data coming out of the home, because there are going to be, just like there's schools that lie on the data all the time. Do I think that every parent is going to be honest about rigorously working with their no, they're not. I mean, everybody's human. Okay. But at the same time, you don't want this flipping on you as the parent or the school system. That's why I keep encouraging people to maintain good documentation during this time period. But it would be smart for the teacher to establish some kind of baseline of this is where the student was performing, and then communicate with the parent as to what the data collection would look like, and have it be something simple. And then during the sessions where, let's say, you have scheduled sessions where you're working with the child electronically, or let's say in whatever other format, you have methods of simple probes in order to ensure that the data is being maintained. So if you already have a mutual agreement on what the data would look like, then at that point there is no confusion. Make it simple though. Everything should be simple. You know, these complex sets of data, they're just unnecessary and they waste so much time during the school day. So, with that being said, what would compensatory services look like? Well, anything that you're not capable of doing during a distant learning, or let's say the child is not um, one that would benefit from distant learning, well, then at that point, what you need to look at is um, providing those services when this is relaxed and you're able to provide these services directly. Now, that can be embedded over the summer. That can be added to the child's IEP services for next year. I think I already covered this in a prior video, to where instead of, let's say, two speech language sessions, the school adds on a third. So that third is to make up for what wasn't provided during, this closure period. And that third, you continue with that third session as a compensatory to make up for those services through, let's say, the first semester or maybe the entire school year. Two sessions are needed to be able to provide a FAPE, because that's what the IEP team determined the child needed. The third one added on is to make up for what was lost or what was not able to be provided. Now you can do that combination with academics, either added on, but I probably isn't feasible to do during a school day, because you don't want to have any compensatory education services sort of screwing with the child's least restrictive environment percentages. So you might need to go look at the child's least restrictive environment percentages. So all over the country, most of them use the same uniform percentage, and that would be general education being 100% of the day in the general education class to 79% of the day. That would be that top tier. And then that second tier would be, 79% down to 40% of the day would be that second tier inside general education. And then what we consider a self-contained special education setting would be less than 40% of the day in a general education setting. So if you sit there and you look at the child's percentage of time that they're required to be, or that the IEP team believes that they need to be in general education, you may have some percentage time to work with so that they still maintain their least restrictive environment percentage as decided by the team, in order to tuck in some additional compensatory services during the normal school year. or you can start providing it over the summer if you live in a state where the emergency health thing, safety thing has been lifted to the point where the schools can start providing these services. Or you can make a deal with the parent to where these services will be provided by a private provider at public school expense. These are all ways to do it. Okay. But a great question, and I appreciate you asking it. And, I see that you're a teacher, special education teacher, and I appreciate what you're doing and asking a question like this. Okay.